the new nominee for Attorney General, Elliot Richardson, and the special prosecutor that he will appoint in this case will have the total cooperation of the executive branch of this government. They will get to the bottom of this thing. They will see to it that all of those who are guilty are prosecuted and are brought to justice.
If they did, President Nixon would be in desperate trouble. He had ordered the cover-up of the bugging at Democratic Party headquarters at the Watergate. This was a criminal obstruction of justice. Now the president's former counsel, John Dean, had given evidence against him, and the cover-up was coming to light. To preserve his claim of innocence, Nixon was forced to appoint as his new Attorney General the administration's Mr. Clean.
He said, "I want you to follow the evidence wherever it may take you, even to the White House itself."
Did you believe him?
I believed him enough to feel that I was entitled to treat him at his word.
Richardson's appointment had to be confirmed by the Senate, where the Democrats were the majority. The Senate insisted Richardson name a special prosecutor for Watergate who'd be truly independent. They wanted a Democrat, but the White House was shocked by Richardson's choice. His old law professor, a liberal who'd worked for the Kennedys, Archibald Cox.
Cox was a known Nixon hater, a Democratic zealot, a very talented and intelligent man, but he no sooner became involved in the investigation of Watergate than he reached his tentacles out into anything he could find, which would have provided the grist for the material of impeaching the president.
The committee will come to order, and counsel will call the first witness.
Mr. John W. Dean III.
Stand up and raise your right hand. You swear that the evidence that you shall give...
John Dean alone had testified that the president was criminally involved in the Watergate cover-up.
The meeting with the president that afternoon with Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and myself was a tremendous disappointment to me because it was quite clear that the cover-up, as far as the White House was concerned, was going to continue.
Dean's version of a series of meetings with Nixon was repudiated by the White House. Cox needed proof. Then the most improbable and complete proof came to light.
Mr. Butterfield, are you aware of the installation of any listening devices in the Oval Office of the President?
I was aware of listening devices. Yes, sir.
When were those devices?
The revelation that the president had had all his meetings automatically recorded meant that the tapes must contain the answer to the key question: was the president directly involved in the cover-up? He refused to surrender the tapes to the special prosecutor.
It therefore becomes my duty promptly to seek subpoenas and other available legal procedures for obtaining the evidence for the grand jury. We will initiate...
On behalf of the grand jury investigating Watergate, Cox slapped a subpoena on the President of the United States, ordering him to come to court and bring 9 specified tapes with him.
One day, Mr. Cox came to us in the jury room and said to us that Mr. Nixon wasn't going to honor the subpoena, and what do we want to do about it.
Notching up the pressure, Cox got the grand jury to vote for an order enforcing the subpoena. But the judge told Cox that this unprecedented case called for a breach of the rule of grand jury secrecy.
My jaw figuratively dropped when he said to me, "Well, Mr. Cox, I don't really doubt your word, but I think I shouldn't simply accept what you say about the grand jury's vote. I ought to have them in open court and poll them." It was a marvelously symbolic scene. There were the 19, 20 grand jurors lined up. They'd be the first 20 people you met on the street. Some black, some white, some employed, others without jobs, old, so forth.
We were really adamant in our position that we had a right as the grand jury people to hear what was on the tapes. And they were really in what we thought were in the public domain. We thought they weren't President Nixon's tapes. We thought they were the public's tapes.
The court, after hearing the presentation, signed the order to show cause. It is returnable August 7 at 10 a.m.
Nixon's lawyers argued that the president's work and that of his successors would be imperiled if judges ran roughshod over the confidentiality of presidential meetings. His high principles happily coincided with his self-interest. The tapes Cox had subpoenaed were the ones in which the president and his aides plotted the cover-up. The most damning was a discussion with John Dean about paying hush money to the Watergate burglars.
It will compound the obstruction of justice situation. People around here are not pros at this. I mean, there's sort of thing mafia people can do.
Each day, a president of the United States is required to make difficult decisions on grave issues.
It will cost money. I would say these people are going to cost $1 million over the next few years. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that we're...
Well, you can get $1 million and you can get it in cash. I know where it can be gotten.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not easy.
This kind of frank discussion is only possible when those who take part in it know that what they say is in strictest confidence.
That argument really doesn't prevail. A president, we don't think, would be held by a court to have the right to have secret criminal conversations.
It wasn't only in his pursuit of the tapes that Cox took on the president. His sweeping remit required him to investigate all presidential abuses. Even the purchase of Nixon's California home at San Clemente was open to Cox's scrutiny.
This outraged the president. And he asked me to tell Elliot Richardson in no uncertain terms that this was not the role of the special prosecutor.
Attorney General Richardson called up and asked me to come over, summoned me over to his office.
Nixon could make Richardson his messenger, but he didn't realize the way these two Boston Brahmins would talk to each other.
He was counting on me to understand that he was doing the president's bidding, and that he was also counting on me to understand that he was counting on me to exercise my own judgment and do as I thought right.
Nixon was not so understanding.
The president really had concluded as he watched Cox go about his duties that this was a battle to the death, I think, and he said in my hearing, I'm going to get rid of this man.